Past the hour, joining us now, the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Republican Congressman Ed Royce of California. Also with us, NBC News political director and moderator of Meet the Press, Chuck Todd. Good to have you both on board.
Ed, we're wondering why Congress left town before we had a really big, robust debate on an issue that nobody agrees on. We're stumbling into something. The White House didn't even want to call it war. Shouldn't Congress have stayed in town and debated this and got to the bottom of what our strategy is?
Well, we had 6 hours of debate.
That's not enough for a war.
But the bottom line, Joe, is that we've seen this ISIL organization double in size.
Right.
If we're a little bit worried about what's going to happen in Saudi Arabia, in UAE, in Jordan, right, in Yemen, in terms of those governments toppling, there'd better be an international plan to take some concerted action. And it better be led by those in the region, by Sunnis and Kurds.
So are you saying, is it too early for us to go all in?
I don't see why you would want the blowback of having the United States be the force on the ground. We've got 190,000 Kurdish troops. Why not arm them properly? You've got other groups like the Free Syrian Army that are fighting ISIL right now. Why not give them the wherewithal and have a broader coalition? The French airstrikes started this morning. Have a broader coalition go in there and do the air power.
What Arab state? What Arab state is going to go on the ground?
I had meetings yesterday with the ambassadors from many of the countries from the region, and what they communicate to us is that when they are working with Sunnis right now that were part of the awakening, part of the response against al-Qaeda in the past, when they are seeing that the Kurds aren't getting the equipment yet that they really need, and we met with a foreign minister three days ago from Kurdistan who says his troops still need that equipment, why not focus on that rather than introduce the United States into that cauldron on the ground?
I guess a little bit, what if the Sunni moderates don't do this? What if the Syrian opposition, this moderate opposition, whoever they are, what if they don't have the wherewithal? You want them to have this wherewithal. Is there proof that they have the wherewithal to do this?
I would give you this proof. At least let's look at the Kurdish contingents. You had Kurdish female battalions on the ground defeat ISIL a week ago in one battle. You've got now a pushback along the entire Kurdish region with our air support.
Right? No offense on the Kurds. Let's take. I'm sorry. Take the Kurds out. The Kurds have always been there. Everybody else.
But Chuck,
where are the Saudis?
Chuck,
where are the Jordanians on this? What about the Turks? Don't they have a role in this? Where are the Emirates? They're not doing it.
The Saudis are writing a check. They're working right now with Sunnis on the ground to train them.
They're writing a check, and then other Saudis are writing a check to ISIS.
And we're working on terror finance to cut that off, as we're working on pressure on to close that border. And you're right, this is hard work. There's no guarantees in this, but the one thing you know at the end of the day is that we did engineer the Sunni awakening against al-Qaeda. It can be ignited again, and already ISIL is overplaying its hand.
How bad of an ally is Turkey?
It's a bad ally.
I'm serious. Are they one of the worst friends we have on the planet right now?
By definition, they're an ally because they're in NATO, so they have to be a NATO ally, but they don't behave like an ally, right?
Yeah.
And this is a question, what pressure can we put on Turkey to make certain it closes that border and that it moves against those Alibabas, those crooks and thieves that are taking $2 million a day in oil from ISIL and putting that hard currency.
So far, everything you say makes perfect sense. I've got no follow-up questions, but I want to add in about the issue of arming the Free Syrian Army. Right. Is there any hope, any legitimate credibility to the concept? I mean, do you think that there is some way this could work?
Well, think about this. These are people that for the last 2 years held on. They're sort of the middle class in Syria. As the president said, you know, they're pharmacists, they're farmers, they're physicians. Can you teach them how to fight? I don't know. For 2 years, they've held on against ISIL on one front, against al-Nusra, against the barrel bombs coming down from Assad, and they could, without money, they have held on. They've held Aleppo, and you've got to keep that line of supply open up there to the border, and you've got an opportunity to help them do that and stay part of the fight against ISIL. So, why wouldn't you want them to defend themselves?
So, Chuck, we were both around covering the Hill in 2003, covering the White House in 2003. Why does it seem that in 2014 to stumble into Syria is even more convoluted than what we did in 2003?
I'm with you. I don't understand. Here we are, other than an election.
I'm not talking about the chairman's comments. I agree with the chairman's comments.
Yeah.
I'm talking about Capitol Hill as a whole is so convoluted. You've got the military firing at the president. You've got the chairman of the Joint Chiefs crossing his commander-in-chief every chance he gets in front of Capitol Hill. You've got the CIA registering their concerns. You've got Democrats and Republicans both skeptical on both extremes. You've got the leadership shoving this into a funding bill.
And where's why aren't we focusing on redoing the war authorization?
Yeah.
Right. This would force the debate. We learned nothing politically from the lack of debate around the Iraq war, the lack of sort of focus and going through the different contingency plans. And so I think there's a whole bunch of members of Congress. I think Congress is going to regret this moment, that we're sort of, nobody has explained to me how we don't end up with some combat troops on the ground at some point or another.
Where does
because there's no, if we're trying to arm the moderate Syrian opposition and it fails, are we really going to walk away?
Chuck, the Times had
Are we really going to walk away?
Obviously not.
Right. Hold on. The Times had an article today. For better or worse, we are putting combat troops on the ground. If one of these special forces is fired upon, they have the right to fire back. I mean, that's a form of combat. But I think your previous point actually was a very valid one, and it's directed to the congressman, which is the lack of a vote on an authorization could cause serious long-term damage to the institution of Congress itself. You are essentially ceding to the president the right to declare war and justify it on an authorization that's 13 years old. The fact that
it doesn't mention the word Syria.
That doesn't mention Syria. That doesn't mention Al-Qaeda. I mean, we're justifying it based on that little hinge. So I'm curious your thoughts about what kind of damage you're worried about doing to your own institution, running home to tend to your elections before voting on a war authorization.
I think that a lot of this is probably a statement by members that they're not going to give the president authorization, or any president authorization, to put U.S. combat troops into that theater of operation. I mean, that's a reality, is that there is a feeling that what the president is asking for right now is to aid a group that, from a humanitarian standpoint, is being attacked by ISIL. And that's a different issue than starting down that road for authorization of use of force, which then could lead to the slippery slope that you all...
So you're saying Congress would not authorize troops?
Congress would not send in the 82nd Airborne, and that's the point. Okay. And they're transmitting that message. And second, that's not bad for the Arab world to see either, because this isn't our fight, it is their fight.
Congressman Ed Royce, thank you very much. Chuck Todd.